Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to the Transportation and Logistics Podcast, powered by Atlanta Dispatch and Humble Bee Enterprises. I am very excited to be here to welcome a special guest. We have Matthew Leffler, who is the Armchair attorney. And before we begin, the Dispatcher's Guide to the Galaxy is available now as an ebook and a physical book. So feel free to grab that bad boy wherever you normally grab your books, whether it be Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or if it's a ebook, go to Apple Books and all that kind of good stuff. So that's available. And also, man, trucking has not been easy over the last 18 months. And while the market may be course correcting by the end of 2023, I was recently able to attend the U.S. D.O.T. Mid-South Atlantic Region Small Business Contractor Symposium. And yes, that was a lot, but I was able to learn of a lot of opportunities that are within the bipartisan infrastructure law that would that would require transportation services. One of the individuals that I had the pleasure of hearing speak was Angela Washington, and she mentioned Executive Order 13985, which is titled Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Community Through the Federal Government. This is basically directing agencies to make federal contracting and procurement opportunities more readily available to all eligible vendors and to remove barriers faced by underserved individuals and communities. So, additionally, Angela spoke on Memorandum 2203, where President Biden established a policy designed to increase the share of contracts awarded to small disadvantaged businesses to 15% by 2025. So I say all that to say this. I charge all of the small businesses out there, the mom and pop shops and all those folks to get your federal and state certifications. These certifications like the WOSB, Women Owned Small Business Certificate, the SDVOSB, Service Disabled Veteran Owned Small Business. That's actually, I used to work for one of those type of companies out in Afghanistan, and the Hub Zone certificate, which would be contractors based out of historically underutilized business zones. These things right here can make you eligible to see some of that action within the government contracting space and to move away from the spot market. And Matt, look, whether DAT is right in their suit against convoy or not, motor carriers are hard pressed to survive, and this market leverages only the load boards. Now, have you seen any sectors within transportation that are thriving, or is everybody kind of in that same seat of it's kind of being affected by that mighty swing of the pandemic pendulum?
I mean, if you're hauling fuel, if you're hauling food products, it's probably not hitting you really hard. It certainly is not pleasant. But there are sectors I think are doing okay. But you're right. This is something that we haven't seen for a little bit. But this is the business, man. It's feast or famine. It's always been this way. It'll always be this way. But this time is hard, and it's definitely something I've been thinking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, look, Matthew, thank you so much for coming back onto the Transportation and Logistics podcast. Man, we know you as the Armchair attorney. And, I do want to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But to bridge the gap for the listeners who may be experiencing you for the first time, what is your trucking pedigree? Like, tell us your trucking story.
Oh my goodness. I'm happy to do that. So my grandfather was a tank commander in World War II. When he got home, he opened a business hauling grain, and he built a small fleet in central Illinois. And unfortunately, he contracted polio, was in the hospital for about 6 months, and he lost that business. Eventually, he became a mechanic because he was paralyzed partially in his legs. And he got my father to start working pretty early too. So dad began turning wrenches like 8, 9 years old, working on farm equipment. And eventually, when he got out of college at Northern Illinois University, he went to work at Roadway in 1976 before deregulation. And he ran the night shift for a shop in Chicago Heights. Over time, he was at Roadway for almost 15 years. Spent some time at Airborne, which was before it was acquired by DHL. And then in 1991, he followed the trend of this outsourcing of types of transportation and different services. And he created a company called Outsource Fleet Services. And he began as a service provider for a company called RPS, Roadway Package Systems. Now, RPS, for your listeners who are really loving this history and transportation, they eventually get bought by Caliber, and then they become FedEx Ground. And so we were the largest provider of maintenance for FedEx Ground for over 20 years. We took over the entire state of California. We got parts of Illinois, and we took that business and we grew it with a whole bunch of other incredible fleets across this country. And I got to go work for my dad in 2012. So you mentioned I'm a lawyer. So I went to law school. I practiced law for a couple of years, but I felt the call of this business. And I went to work for my dad. And we grew that company until 2018. We sold it to a company called Dickinson Fleet Services. And I was a VP of sales for Dickinson, one of the largest providers of mobile service in the United States. And I ended up leaving after about a year and a half of serving as the VP to go do something different. But I had a non-competition agreement. And so non-competition agreements tell you where you can and where you can't work. And I had to make a decision where I was going to go. And so I went into software because that was allowing me to continue to stay in this business that I love so much. And I was with a couple different software companies before my non-compete eventually ended. But I love maintenance and I love this business. And so that is my background in logistics. It's 3 generations. And I got 4 more kids that are ready to get back in this supply chain as quick as they can.
Man, that is such an amazing, background. The pedigree is strong, brother, and that's why I'm very, very pleased to have you here on stage to have this conversation with you. Because anything that has to do with Safety Week is definitely going to be talking about. It's going to be hitting those points that are just so second nature to you with your background and with all the things that you've done. So the International Road Check, which is what we're going to be talking about today, was started back in 1988, and since its inception, there have been over 1.8 million roadside inspections credited to this campaign. Now, 2023's International Road Check is going to take place between May 16th and 18th. But before we get too far, Matt, what is the International Road Check? Like, what is its purpose?
That's a great question. So, across North America, we all have safety standards. How much tread depth should your tire have? What lights are on your vehicle, and are those lights working? And what the governments of all these nations do, Canada and the United States and Mexico, they work with the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, and they inspect commercial vehicles nonstop for 3 days. You get to a place when it's happening where it's between 10 and 15 vehicles are inspected a minute, and they are looking for, you know are you meeting the requirements? Do you have your hours of service? Do you have your records? Do you have maintenance history of your vehicle? Is the vehicle working? And it is something that we talk about in this business, months and months and months in advance. And yet, these numbers, Jory, they're not encouraging.
How so? How so?
Well, imagine that you were going to go to the store and buy a gallon of milk. And I say, look, all of these gallons of milk are great. There's 5 you can choose from. And I say, look, one thing I got to tell you, Jory, is one of these gallons, I'm not going to tell you which one, but one of them is really, really unsafe. It's just not really that great. You'd probably say, Matt, I don't want to buy any of these milks if you can't tell me which of the 5 is bad for me to have. But that's the result of International Road Check. Almost every single year, 1 in 5 of these vehicles that are inspected do not meet the safety requirements under, at least in the United States, the FMCSA. So that's kind of why it happens. But it's when the regulator decides, hey, we should probably make sure everyone's kind of following the rules that we set. And that's what International Road Check is all about: safety, compliance, and education. How can you make sure your vehicle is operating safely?
Man, man, man. again, we had you on stage last year to talk about 2022's International Road Check, and the focus of last year's inspection was wheel ends. And for those who didn't hear it, what comprises wheel ends, brother?
Well, you're talking the thing that touches the road. You have your tires, your braking systems, the bearings, the axle. These are the things that make the vehicle stop when you are trying to stop. And so, wheel and maintenance on these inspections and making sure there's enough hub in your axle or enough grease, whatever you need, like you have to make sure you're following those things. The road check will focus on different elements like communicating about those elements, but make no mistake, when they're inspecting, they're looking at every single thing that they're required to for both of the inspections that they're performing. So that's what the wheel ends are. And again, last year results were not the greatest you could imagine.
Right, right, right. I mean, when you say that, yeah, of course, it was broadcasted to everybody. It's going to be will ends, and now that the results have been released about what actually took place during 2022's safety week. Do you have those numbers like readily available? Because I think you're right on it. I think it was one out of every five still failed, or those commercial vehicles were put out of service in the U.S. For tires or something of that nature that had to do with the wheel ends. Am I correct on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers right now. They conducted 59,026 inspections, and they placed 12,456 commercial motor vehicles out of service. This is again like this is what we need to understand as an industry. Um, Maintenance is not about just in time fulfillment. Maintenance is about prevention and scheduling and understanding what you're up against. The fact that you have like 140 some odd thousand citations a year for people that just don't have a copy of the annual inspection is just astonishing. But you're exactly right, man. Like you look at these things, you say maybe it's an aberration. Maybe it's just some weird fluke this year, but it's not. It's just not that way. And we need to come to grips with that fact.
Around 19.4% of those commercial vehicles, just like we were just talking about, were put out of service in the U.S. For tires not meeting the quota. With your background in fleet maintenance, do you have any tips or maybe even rules of thumb for tire maintenance for those fleet owners that might be a part of that 19.4%?
This is what we need to really champion our drivers, our commercial vehicle operators. They are the front line in these vehicles in order to them to safely deliver freight on time and undamaged. You want to encourage your drivers to be passionate about their pre and post trip inspections. They see the asset. They can understand what they witness. And if they feel like if they report these things that they're not going to get fixed, you need to step back and encourage people to make those types of reports and to encourage the maintenance and safety culture. But it is all about having a cultural shift. Uh, you save hundreds of dollars per service event when you schedule versus waiting for it to break down, waiting for it to wear down or some other unplanned event. So this is why it's all about understanding what long-term investments you need to make in your company and in the culture.
Look, I know your background, and I know that you had the non-compete in certain ways. But are there any resources that you would point people to make sure that they have all of the material to help build that culture, that safety culture with their new class of drivers and all that type of stuff? Do you have any? Would you direct anybody to any type of literature or resources?
Oh yeah, I'll give you a list of some folks. I mean, if anyone is not following Brandon Weissman from
True.
trucksafe.com, um, Brandon is awesome. I mean, TruckSafe is phenomenal. Like Jory, you know him too. He's a good dude.
Oh, 100%. I've interviewed him twice because he is very knowledgeable on all things safety, all things trucking, all things compliance. So, no, definitely a great guy. So, no,
He's got
I hear you there.
he's got a great YouTube channel. I mean, they just according to what I saw from him just earlier today, there's some new DOT regulation on using mouth swabs for certain types of impediments when like for testing for drug or alcohol. And he broke it down. So it's something where, as an owner operator, as a small fleet, or any type of person in this business, these rules change quickly. It seems like an old industry. It seems like it never changes. But when new rules happen, you need to know what's going on. So making sure you use the resources like someone like Brandon, but also your insurance company. You can ask them all sorts of things. Give us training on different inspections or programs we should be participating in. Because if you're a safety driven business, you will pay less ultimately for your insurance. And then, of course, your trucking associations. There are so many companies and people and entities that want you to be successful. And then my personal favorite is go to Reddit. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff on Reddit for truck drivers and people wanting to learn, what this ridiculous business is actually like.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, last year it was will ends, but is it clear, like, is it stated how these different areas of focus are decided upon?
I don't really know how they make the decision of like what thing are we going to focus on this year, but I understand like ABS and cargo securement is a good thing to focus on. I suspect that they rotate what they want to spend their time on. But again, like they have a very robust and clear inspection that they conduct, and they're going to focus on anything that's out there. The only difference I suspect is that they also want to serve as educational purpose, and so a lot of the literature you might find on International Roadcheck for 2023 is going to talk about cargo securement and ABS because these are important things when it comes to the safety of a vehicle and the safety of the cargo.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree 100%. And just like you mentioned, in 2022, there were just over 59,000 inspections over the course of those 3 days, and 12,456 motor vehicles were put out of service due to some type of incorrectness. And then there were just over 3,700 drivers who were put out of service. So that's 21 and 6% respectively, 21% and 6% respectively. Um, Now, of these top five that I'll just read out aloud, I just want to know if any of these would have surprised you. Okay, so the number one reason as to why a vehicle was put out of service last year was brake systems, tires, defective service brakes, lights, and cargo securement. um, yeah. How do you feel about that?
Doesn't that terrify you, Jory? Doesn't
Yeah.
that terrify you? I mean, you have a young child, I have young children, and you read these numbers. And those are the things that make the machine stop. That's
Right.
what happens. And those are the things that are defective. It's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers.
And we 100%. I mean, does it surprise you in any way, any of those, or is that about normal?
No, that's how it always is. This is the sad part of it is these are typical things. The main things people find that are defective are BLTs, brakes, lights, and tires. That is what the issue is, and that's what ends up happening. They don't get serviced, and then they get knocked out of service.
Man, okay, I hear you, brother. I hear you. When it comes down to, uh, what's the difference? So we got the number one reason was brake systems, with over just under 4,600 vehicles being placed out of service. That's 25% of the vehicles that were put out of service in North America. That was for the brake systems, and just over 2,300 were for defective service brakes. What's the difference between those things? Like, why aren't those a part of the same system?
So braking systems will include things like the airlines. So the ability for when you have brakes that are done with air power, they have brake pads that smash the drums. So that brake is part of the trailing system, and that's what's part of the brake systems.
It's interesting because even this listing of how all of this information is just here readily available of the results, there were some pretty scary things. We talked about the out of service for the vehicles, But when it comes to the out of service for the actual drivers, now that's scary. That's scary, scary.
Oh yeah, well, on the driver's side, a lot of this has to do with ELD compliance. So the challenge that a lot of drivers have is that they're using systems that may be prone to failure, and we've seen some ELDs that end up getting revoked by the FMCSA. But these driver qualification things and driver out of service, again, it's indicative of how we treat our drivers in the supply chain. That is the piece that is always the part that gets forgotten. And this fact that you have that many drivers getting knocked out just shows that this profession has become, to an extent, a revolving door.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, with that, 45% of the reasons a driver was put out of service was due to the falsification of their logs. Now, that includes what you just talked about, the actual system being, prone to failure and them maybe just doing what they feel like is right to just get back on the road. But it says other stuff about the culture. You say that it's a very high turnover industry. I feel as though it also devalues the safety because if 45% of the drivers who got put out of service is falsifying their logs, it says that they're trying to get back on the road sooner than they probably should.
It can be companies cutting corners that allow them to they neglect their driver program and training program. They neglect the maintenance of their vehicles. They defer it till later. And this is one of these really difficult parts in this market right now, is being able to invest in that type of training or that type of maintenance culture. And it makes it so you neglect it. And that is, I suspect we're going to find very similar things. And the other part we have to keep in mind is motor carriers know this is coming, and this is the time when they should be the most prepared for it. And it just goes to show that in the actual amount out there is there's probably a significantly higher number of people that are violating.
True. I mean, I know that there were a lot of industry participants who've been pushed out of the trucking industry due to the low rates and the high cost of operation, as prone to getting in trouble, getting busted, which is, not embodying that safety culture that you talked about earlier. And it makes me even think, what type of intentionality are some of the carriers utilizing or implementing when they're getting into the market? Because I talked about 45% of the reasons why drivers were put out of service was for the falsification of logs, but the second highest thing was at 25%, and that was when the motor carrier, the driver, was operating a vehicle that required a completely different class of license. So they're not even qualified to operate that particular piece of equipment. And it's like, how do I don't judge. I don't judge. I
But
don't any of that. But it's like the intentionality behind the operation itself. That's definitely something to look at. I
well,
mean,
you get you're right, exactly right. You get the supply chain that you want. People are going to make these decisions, and the cost of complying may be just too high for them. They don't want to do that. But it should give us all a little bit of pause and think, okay, well, last year FMCSA was talking about allowing 19-year-olds to operate interstate, as in this apprenticeship program. And this year we're talking about FMCSA looking at automation, robotic truck drivers, and you can bet that they're going to inspect the robots more than we inspect our human driving habits. So it's an interesting moment in history as we continue to watch the supply chain work the way it's always worked, and then see that on these outside parts of this innovation that start creeping into what we do.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that we would definitely see more vigilance on robotics operating a truck because of the nuclear verdict that would sure follow if something happened, in that aspect. So, no, I definitely hear you there. I have this question for you because you've seen the industry for years. You know it, especially on the fleet maintenance side, which is just as important as any other part because that's where a lot of cost savings, that's where a lot of costs go. Um, are there, is there a set of aligned stars that would make you enter the market as a fleet owner?
Today,
Yeah, no, what would have to happen in the market for you to be like, I, Matthew Leffler, am going to become an asset based carrier?
Man, I think the here's how I actually think. That's a great question, Jory. I think about this all the time. I don't know that I would be an asset based carrier with company drivers and trucks. I think I would start off being in with trailers, right? I think you have to. I look at people like Freightvana. I look
Yeah.
at Convoy and Uber. You know exactly. They invest in trailing assets. Their customers want them to. So you get pulled into assets. I think if you're just brokering, it's going to be very tough to stay competitive in this environment or the future. It is people who have access to trailers, I think, get you more oomph in this business. But you have companies like Repower that you can borrow trailers from. So you don't actually have to own a bunch of trailers. You can borrow them or rent them or lease them. So, oh man, that's a great question. What about you, Joy? What would you do?
If just like I opened this conversation with about the contract work, if there was something where I understood that I'm a prime contractor or maybe even a contractor, and I truly understand that there is volume, and now I have all I need to do is get the units to facilitate the volume that I know is guaranteed. Well, that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable versus, dilly dallying in the spot market. It would have to be something that is contractually lined up so that I know that these trucks are going to get utilized every single day. And, it provides an opportunity to scale as time, goes on. So that's what I would want to see before I enter the market as an asset owner. But only time will tell. But that's like I was talking about this today on my very first Instagram live. I got interviewed by some of the compadres of She Trucking. So we had
Nice.
Ebony, Polk, and Jerry of A Life on the Road Recruiting. I had a nice conversation with those ladies, and that was one of the things that I was talking about was just the contract space and what that can really do for people. So that's what it would take for me, brother. Thank you for flipping that question on me. And
Like, well, you're right. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to like asset utilization. Like, if you think about jumping in the spot market and running your entire business with an owner operator, that's really tough. That's a really tough knife razor edge you're on. But there's a lot of money to be made in that space. But contract work, dedicated work, consistent work, that's most of us out there really want that consistent, expected, no big surprises type of work. And in trucking, maybe that's like the world of middle mile in LTL or something. But there's just not a lot of that in the spot market contract stuff where you can go dedicated place to place. And when these big motor carriers like Werner or Knight Swift make their trailer pools available for owner operators to pull, that just gives you more opportunity. But yeah, unless you're running that truck to shit, like you're slip seating that truck, I want nothing to do with that business. Nothing to do with it.
100%, brother, 100%. And as we transition, this is to 2023 now. What are the areas of focus for the 2023 International Road Check?
Well, this is ABS and cargo securement. That's what we're talking about, man. This is when the light is working. If it's connected to your vehicle, it has to work, right? You have to have the lights functioning, and ABS is important for trailers. And then cargo securement. This is what we're looking at. Is the freight gets smashed up? That's what we're focusing on this year.
Okay. Well, look, let's go into both of those. I mean, when it comes to the ABS, anti-lock braking system, what does that really mean? Can you describe what is the purpose of an anti-lock braking system?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is you want to try to make it so it doesn't lock up. When you drive a vehicle and you're on the road and you lose control in snow or water, uh, and you start sliding and you hit the brakes and it makes it slide even more. The brakes lock up, you keep going. Like braking systems are essentially like they pulse. They don't just one hard push, and that allows the brakes not to fail. So if you're in a hard braking situation, ABS is very beneficial to make sure that you do not have the consequence of a hard braking where you can't stop and you have a catastrophic accident. Because we didn't talk much about this, but my previous career before I got into maintenance was defending trucking companies in litigation. And a lot of times, maintenance was a factor you had to consider because how the equipment works is really important to understanding who had the last clear chance to avoid something. And we want trucks and trailers to be able to brake. We all agree on
Oh yeah, 100%. No
that.
hesitation there, brother. Okay. And as far as cargo securement, that makes me think flatbed. Is that everything? Is that driving too? In the grand scheme, we've talked about some statistics, and there was one that really, really, really surprised me, man. And that is the fact that between 2021 and 2022, there were over 50,000 seatbelt violations, which make up just shy of 5% of all driver violations. And that is wild to me because I feel super safe getting in a car and making sure that I buckle up. That's just something I don't even think about it. It is so second nature. I have zero, problems with buckling up. And as big as most commercial vehicles are, it's saying to me, it's like it makes me wonder, ponder what would be the reason somebody would not be buckled up in a truck. You got to
Man, well, that's a great question. You have to ask, like, okay, what are truck drivers like? What do they really like? And they're independent. They are. They know what they're doing and they know how to do it. And I think it's my opinion. Again, I have no crystal ball here, but I bet it's that streak of independence. They just don't want to wear it. And if they get a ticket, they get a ticket. Now, the other thing is, it could also be the case that they unclasp the belt before the officer gets to them. That may be another piece of it, but I just think they just don't want to wear it and they don't care about getting cited for it.
Man, well, like I said, that one really surprised me. There are a lot of violations to go around. I mean, even other things that scared me was when it came to the hazmat and dangerous goods of the violations that put vehicles out of service. 90, there wasn't very many. I'm not going to say that there was just a billion of them, but the way that the facilities that know that they're loading dangerous goods, hazmat material. 95, that was the leading category that led to carriers being put out of service, is the way that it was loaded and the package integrity. Now, I don't know exactly what that entails, but if we're talking about hazmat, dangerous goods, and the way that it's supposed to be specifically packaged and that not being how it's done, that also is a little terrifying for me.
I'm with you, man. Like I love reading things from the American Transportation Research Institute. Figuring out what makes the American supply chain tick. And then you look at these results from these campaigns, and again, these are during scheduled blitzes. They have them happen, and they go to the next thing. And again, it reminds us that it's not as safe or maybe as well regulated as we would hope. We're not enforcing these things at the level we probably should. I mean, imagine if we just had the resources to do these inspections every single day like this. If we could just
Right.
do that many, would that be a disaster for our country or our supply chain? Maybe temporarily, but maybe they'd start maintaining their stuff better then.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I had that question queued up for you, and whether or not the safety blitz, the safety week, being the emphasis, or it being something that was standard, every single day.
Yeah,
Who?
yeah, that's
At,
expensive. They don't want to do that.
right, right, right.
It would be great if they did. The industry would never have that. So I don't think you're going to ever see that. I mean, I'd love to see. We in America, right? We have the federal annual inspection, so we mandate one inspection a year. One inspection you have to do. And some states have different versions of it. Some states will have additional inspections. So California is a good example. They have a thing called a BIT, and they do a quarterly inspection. But that is the only rational explanation for what we see with this International Roadcheck data. it happens. They know it's coming. And maybe they don't have the education to say, okay, this is what you need to do. But for all motor carriers, even in transportation, if you want to show how you thrive in this environment, you hold those inspections on social media and hold them high. I mean, dude, you and I both love Dan the Driver Row. Like he shows off his inspections that he gets when he gets pulled over. I mean, this is the culture that we want to see in the supply chain, right?
Yeah, 100%. And this platform has always been trucker first and fleet owner first. So everything that I'm talking about, everything that we're working towards is to raise the bar on the operations. And I definitely encourage those who hear this to just take a nice little inventory of where you are in your safety standards, your procedures with your organization, and you don't have to outsource somebody to come in and build it. But if that's not something that you have the ability to grow or make more robust yourself, it might be something that you want to reach out to one of those compliance professionals. And I will leave it at that. So, Matt, you got some other stuff going on, brother. You made an announcement on LinkedIn today. Let's talk about Leffler Technologies. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is exciting, man. This is exciting. So, I mean, the story of me is the story of trying to find a better way to help fleets maintain their equipment. That's what I really am passionate about. When you spend your days crawling on trailers, looking at damage, looking at bottom rails and top rails and seven ways they get smashed up, and you try to help your fleet customer service that thing. Like I love that stuff. I just love commercial trailers and I love commercial vehicles. And I spent my time with my father, which was a business of having employees that clock in and work really, really hard and create amazing repairs and amazing services and keep vehicles, uh, compliant at all times. Like the world of fleet maintenance is the world of compliance at all times. And what I had the enormous pleasure of doing was an incubation with Michelin, the tire manufacturer, one of the great manufacturers in this industry. And we said, if we could do something together, something different that has never been done, what would it be? And we talked about it. And that's what over the last few months I've been focusing on is raising capital to build the solution that I believe this industry needs for repairing and maintaining commercial vehicles. It's about inspections, it's about service, and it's about transparency and consistency. So I took the initiative yesterday to finally say, publicly, hey, this is what I've been doing. Like, I have a law firm. I am a lawyer first and foremost. I work with clients, but I want to be back in this business of maintenance. And I've taken a little bit of a hiatus, and I'm coming back. So it's kind of cryptic, kind of still in the infancy. But my gosh, Jory, I am overjoyed, and this has been the culmination of working with one of the greatest maintenance professionals of my life, my dad, and learning the culture and the consistency that he put in place to hire, retain, and provide the best maintenance outcomes for his fleet customers. So that's the really high level. And then the other thing is I have twins, and they're both 6 months old, and they are also very challenging.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, look, you mentioned a lot right there. Some of it people probably never even get a chance to experience. What's that like going into a room, into a conversation, into an incubator with such a household brand and getting them on your team, getting them on your side to say, I can do this, and I know, like, getting them to believe in you so that you have that support when things do take off. Like, what is that like?
It is one of the most humbling experiences that I have ever had in my life. The team in the innovation lab are second to none. It is being in a room with some of the most brilliant minds out there. And then you look at the data that we're talking about for International Roadcheck. And we say, if we keep everything exactly as it is right now, maybe just a little bit better, is that enough? And for me, and I believe this is the case with Michelin as well, that data is not good enough. We can do more as an industry to maintain our vehicles. And there has to be a better way, a different way of doing it. And that is, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely bonkers. I don't know how else to describe it, Jory. It's crazy. It's very, very exciting.
Yes, sir, man. And the only thing more exciting than that are those twins that you have. Uh, 6 months now. How has that been, brother? Twin babies.
I mean, I just say, imagine what you're doing, and then double it.
That is hilarious, man. I don't even know. I couldn't fathom that part because, like I told you, the sleep for me, I'm up, man. I'm up very early, have very full days, and the fact that I have a spouse who does so much, I wouldn't be able to do this without her at all. So, shout out to the single parents out there, man. My heart goes out
Oh,
because
absolutely.
this is the craziest thing I've ever done in my life, but also the most fulfilling, rewarding, and I love it. I love it so much. But
Here are the ways I will highlight the differences of our experience, but I will also share that this is very joyful for me. But
uh,
here's the first one, Jory. I have to inventory different sizes of diapers.
was that baby boy bigger than baby girl?
Yeah, baby boy is a big boy. He's a big boy. He's
Yeah, I
about
saw
six.
that.
He's like 6 pounds bigger than she is. So
Yeah.
he's tanking out at size 3. She's kind of on the size 2, but we'll have to jump to other ones from time to time. It's crazy. The dishwasher never stops. The washing machine never stops. These things just go on, and then you get one of them to sleep. And would you imagine this, Jory? The other one wakes up.
Yeah, I can't imagine that, brother. Not right now. Man, that'd be something. One of my best friends, he started out with twins, so he definitely has that life figured out, and now he's on. His wife is pregnant with the fourth boy, so
Oh my
that.
goodness. Well, that
Yes.
I have been I cannot have any more children at this point. We made a procedure last week. I am happily recovered. We are done. Four is enough. That's my slogan. Four is enough.
That is hilarious. Well, congratulations to you, sir, and to your family. And it's always a pleasure having you here on stage. And as far as your endeavors and getting the attention out, I'm always happy to support what you got going on. And this is no different. Please let me know. Use me as a resource for this because I know that this right here is very near and dear to your heart as you opened up about your trucking pedigree. What you're doing now is exactly what you started out with, what you were talking about. So I know that this is something that you're going to put your all into. So I'm definitely happy to help. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we closed out the room this evening?
Yeah, the thing I would say for everyone listening is get your vehicles inspected. Encourage your motor carriers to get inspections done. Get your PMs done before this thing happens. You can help solve the problem that we see in the industry of deferred and neglected maintenance. And then, other than that, like sleep really well because Jory and I are not. We don't even know what that's like. It's been so long. It's been so long. So enjoy the respite all of you have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, look, brother, again, I truly appreciate you for coming on stage and joining us this evening. Everybody, I appreciate the support as always. Tune in on Monday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be partnering up with Freightways Sonar Team, just like we have for the last 2 years, every single Monday. This time, we're going to be talking about if you utilize certain TMS systems, you will have the ability to get access to sonar for the next 2 months. So starting on May 1st, and it's going to go for 2 months. So the sooner you get on, the faster you'll be able to leverage some of those analytics on your own. But again, we're going to be talking about where you should position your trucks to take advantage of the market on Monday. And then next week, who are we talking to? We're talking to somebody next week. Uh, is it Dre? Yeah, it's Drain.io. So we're going to be talking, to a company that has kind of revolutionized the dispatch game when the folks are doing drayage. So I'm very, very excited to highlight this brother next week. So tune in, Matt. You have a blessed evening, brother.
You too, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, peace.